It is Wednesday, the 17th day of September 2014. I'm Kamene Goro, and as always, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us on Ebru African News this afternoon. We've got a whole lot lined up for you as to what's been happening in the world thus far, so let's hop straight to it. Our top story touches on rather sensitive matters, where for Kenyan security guard Maurice Adembesa Ombisa, the horror of Nairobi's Westgate Mall massacre lasted just minutes. Now, he was one of the first of the 67 people killed in the attack. But for his widow and two young children, who on a Sunday mark the one-year anniversary of the bloodbath four-day siege, the trauma of the killings are as bitter as ever.
Kawaida maisha ni ngumu, watoto ni wadogo, sina kazi na wanataka kusoma, wanataka kukula, kulipa nyumba. Haya wazazi wakina mzee na walinikataa hata siendangi huko. Na kwetu watu wangu wajiezi ati naweza sema watalea watoto wangu. Ni mimi mwenyewe tu.
Moving on, nearly $1 billion is needed to fight the Ebola outbreak that's currently raging in West Africa. Now, its announcement comes amid a mounting global alarm over the worst ever Ebola epidemic, which by Friday had claimed close to 2,500 lives.
The United Nations said the response to the Ebola crisis will require billions of shillings, with about half of that needed for the worst-hit country, Liberia. It estimates that some 20,000 people could be infected with Ebola by the end of the year, with Guinea accounting for 16% of infections, Sierra Leone 34%, and Liberia at 40%. If the international community and affected countries respond swiftly and energetically, transmission could begin to slow down by the end of the year and halt by mid-2015.
Because of the way in which the outbreak is advancing, the level of surge we need to do is unprecedented. It is massive.
This health crisis we face is unparalleled in modern times. The gravity of the situation is difficult to get across with just a few numbers.
The World Health Organization is reconvening its emergency committee in Geneva, which declared the outbreak an international health emergency in August, to consider further measures to limit its spread, while the UN Security Council will hold an emergency session on Thursday to discuss ways to ramp up the global response to the epidemic.
We are going to establish a global Ebola response coalition, which will be there to support and back up one of the biggest ever international support operations that's ever been known, because we're going to get on top of this virus as quick as we possibly can.
UN humanitarian chief Valerie Amos said there was a huge funding challenge. She also called for support of water and sanitation services, as the recent heavy rains have increased the risk of waterborne diseases.
The food security situation in some parts of the most affected countries is of great concern. The economic slowdown, disruption to markets, and imposition of quarantine, including roadblocks in some areas, are reducing the availability of food and the purchasing power of households.
United States President Barack Obama has termed the Ebola outbreak a threat to security worldwide and announced a larger U.S. role, including the deployment of 3,000 troops to help fight the virus.
The number of hungry people in the world has dropped by 100 million over the last 10 years, but 1 in 9 are still malnourished, with Asia home to majority of the underfed. Now, the war against hunger is being made more difficult not only by conflicts in the Middle East and Africa, but also by the Ebola crisis.
The UN's food agency said the global number was down over 200 million since the early 90s, but warned that despite the progress made, about 805 million people in the world, or 1 in 9, suffer from hunger. In their yearly report, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and the World Food Programme say the Millennium Development Goal of halving the proportion of undernourished people by 2015 is within reach, but only if appropriate and immediate efforts are stepped up. To date, 63 developing countries have reached the target, and 6 more are on track to hit it by 2015.
Progress has been quite uneven among different regions and sub-regions. The progress has been greatest in Southeast Asia and East Asia more generally, as well as in Latin America. There has been much less progress in South Asia and very little progress in Sub-Saharan Africa until fairly recently.
The biggest challenge to achieving zero hunger is conflict, which in turn turns into food crises such as in Iraq, Syria, South Sudan and the Central African Republic, as well as the Ebola crisis affecting Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone. Sub-Saharan Africa, which is hit by political instability, war and civil strife, sluggish income growth, high poverty rates and poor infrastructure have hampered access to the limited food supplies, leading to a prevalence to stunted and underweight children under 5.
We have 200 million less undernourished people nowadays compared when we started 1990s. And also, to be more precisely, 209 million.
The state of food insecurity in the world report says access to food had improved rapidly in countries that has seen overall economic progress, notably in East and Southeast Asia, but also South Asia and Latin America.
Moving on to West Africa, 12 Nigerian soldiers were yesterday sentenced to death for mutiny after shots were fired at their commanding officer in the restive northeast city of Maiduguri earlier this year. Now, a 9-member military tribunal sitting in Abuja convicted the soldiers following the incident.
According to court President Brigadier General Chukwemeka Onkwo, the sentences were subject to confirmation by Nigeria's military authorities, but added there was no doubt about the gravity of the offense. Nigeria's army has been under pressure to end the bloody 5-year insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives, made tens of thousands of others homeless and seen the militants make territorial gains in the northeast in recent weeks.
You were found guilty and sentenced to death by firing squad.
Residents in town raided by the militants have said the insurgents are often armed with rocket-propelled grenades and anti-craft weapons mounted on trucks and in some cases armed personnel carriers. The country's military spokesman Chris Olukalade denied the troops had mutinied, saying Nigeria's soldiers were too disciplined and too patriotic to indulge in this dangerous offense. The military has also rejected claims that hundreds of troops shouldered arms and fled their posts in border town overrun by Boko Haram. Witnesses say the soldiers became unruly and threw stones at an officer when he arrived.
Zooming in on the northern regions of Africa, Egypt's Antiquities Minister on Tuesday denied claims that the Djoser Pyramid, the country's first, had been damaged during restoration work by a company that has been accused of being unqualified to do such work. Addressing journalists who had been allowed inside the 27th century BC pyramid near Cairo, Egypt's Antiquities Minister Mamdouh Al-Damati said the pyramid was destroyed and is not in danger.
You saw the pyramid from inside. It is not destroyed. It is safe. The restoration which done now, which do now in the restoration work, which are making now in the pyramid, are completely in the right way.
A specialist in the restoration of antiquities, Marwa Al-Zaini, however, claimed that the company hired to do the work, Al-Shurbagi, does not have the experience for such projects, and she criticized what has already been done. Zaini called for the appointment of a committee of independent international experts to evaluate the work and decide whether the tomb is in danger or not. Al-Shurbagi's project manager Michel Farid Gobrial brushed aside the criticism, saying that the work that's been done gives the pyramid the appearance that it would have when it was first built. Now, the tomb built by the master architect Imhotep for the pharaoh Djoser is located in Saqqara Necropolis, some 20 kilometers southwest of Cairo. It consists of 6 mastabas or flat roofs of rectangular structure of decreasing size. It originally stood at 203 feet tall. Renovation work began in 2006 but has been on hold since early 2013 due to a lack of funding. We wrap up our bulletin in Europe, where Scotland will go to the polls tomorrow to decide on its future. Now, voters are torn between competing visions, one arguing that the nation is stronger as part of the United Kingdom, while the other claims that Scotland has the means to go it alone.
Until recently, it seemed unthinkable that Scotland, an integral part of the United Kingdom, a country fused with England for more than 3 centuries, could break away and go it alone. But as campaigners make their last attempts to convince the undecided ahead of Thursday's referendum, polls suggest it's a very real possibility.
Confidence is not based on any opinion poll, on any particular aspect, on any endorsement, on any expert. It's based on what we're finding in the communities around Scotland. That's what our confidence is based on, and it's on that we know the momentum is with us.
Scottish residents aged 16 and over, some 4.2 million people, will have the right to vote. Opinion polls had long given the no campaign a decisive lead, but by earlier this month, the race had significantly tightened.
I think the entire British political establishment, including sections of the British media, certainly as based in England, particularly in London, has just coasted along assuming that no would win. And that's why the sudden spurt in the yes vote is so shocking to them. They hadn't really imagined this would ever happen.
The Yes campaign says Scotland, with its reserves of North Sea oil and tourism, as well as whisky industries, can prosper on its own. The North, meanwhile, are still ahead in most polls and say a yes vote would put living standards at risk, with the threat of higher taxes and the possibility of having to adopt a new currency.
Remember, it was economic opportunities that brought our nations together in 1707, the greatest merger in history. 3 centuries on, our union and our prosperity are still closely bound.
If Scots do vote yes, the full implications are almost literally incalculable. Months of intense negotiations would begin over how and where to relocate Britain's nuclear submarine base, how to disentangle 300 years of shared institutions, and the status of relations with the EU, NATO and the world. But even if Thursday's vote does see Scotland remain as part of the UK, what's not an option is continuing with the status quo.
To a sort of federalisation of the UK, where each region gains quite substantial fiscal autonomy. Of course, if Scotland votes yes, that takes Scotland somewhat out of the equation, but that still would leave the question of what happens politically to the rest of the UK.
As results are tallied on Thursday evening, millions of Britons at home and abroad will be holding their breaths, waiting to see if they wake up to a changed country and a step into the unknown.
That wraps up all we had lined up for you on Ebru African News this afternoon. Make a date with Michelle Morgan later on this evening for our primetime bulletin and a more comprehensive outlook as to what's happening in our world today. Many thanks for your absolutely scintillating company. Not forgetting a special thank you to our new viewers in Nairobi and beyond. Here at Ebru Africa TV, we absolutely appreciate your valued company. I'm Kamene Goro, and until next time, do have yourself one lovely, blessed afternoon.